One of the other things about this roadway is even while you're on the Virginia side, there are lots of physical constraints, particularly as you approach Roslyn, that make it more difficult to approach some of the more ordinary types of highway improvements that you would see on other roadways in different parts of the Commonwealth. The deck over Roslyn, the retaining walls, and running in the middle of Route 29 are all some of those constraining factors with a lot of high-density apartments nearby that roadway. So again, this is a different road, and that means that making progress and finding solutions on this facility are going to have to be different than what we see in other parts of the Commonwealth. And the project that was originally proposed in 2015 was the result of a study that was actually completed and undertaken by the Donohue administration. It started in 2011 and was completed in 2013. It was the result of the I-66 multimodal study. This commission was briefed on that study back in 2011, 2012, and 2013. And that study presented several options for moving forward with I-66. All of them involved some form of hot lane conversion. Some involved conversion for 24/7. Some involved converting one lane to hot and leaving one lane HOV, which I think had some operational issues. And they all involved, looking at eastbound operational issues at the Dulles Toll Road merged with I-66, as well as trying to increase and enhance transit and TDM along the I-66 corridor. As many of you may remember, the original proposal by the McAuliffe administration became a discussion point, if you will, during the fall of 2015 in the campaign season, and there was a lot of discussion about that. That resulted in significant discussion in Richmond during the 2016 General Assembly session, and on February, it was 9th or 10th, in 2016, a compromise was reached with the General Assembly. And again, the General Assembly, a compromise means 51 people agree with it at least. Doesn't mean 100 people in the House or 40 people in the Senate, but it does mean a majority agreed to a compromise. That compromise involved converting I-66 eastbound from 5:30 to 9:30 in the morning into express lanes, a similar treatment in the afternoon from 3 to 7. It did also direct VDOT to immediately initiate the process to widen I-66 eastbound from the Dulles Connector Road to exit 71 travel day to compare the first day of tolling to. What you can see on I-66 in the year without tolling in 2016 is travel speeds went down dramatically and stayed pretty degraded almost through the entire HOV period. This is why hybrid vehicles were going to need to be removed from the roadway. We were not meeting federal standards. If you look in that blue box or dotted little area there, if you will, that is the former HOV hours. Federal law requires that HOV lanes be traveling in excess of 45 miles per hour for 90% of the time. I-66 was meeting the opposite of that standard. We were under 45 miles per hour for 90% of the time, which is to say performing very poorly. Across the corridor, again, we're going to continue to monitor the situation. We want to make sure that this continues throughout the year as travel patterns start to really kind of take hold and establish. When you make a significant change to the transportation system, those don't tend to be overnight. People tend to take times to establish new travel patterns and see what the overall impact on the transportation network is going to be. I think we'll need, honestly, about 6 months before we can make any honest determinations of this is what is happening. One of the major issues I know we've talked about a lot, or the media has talked about a lot, are the toll rates. So how do the toll rates work on I-66 inside the Beltway? The short answer is they work the exact same way they do with the 95 express lanes and the 495 express lanes. And that is to say that they vary based on demand to ensure free flow travel, which is required by federal law. Again, the federal requirement, to be very explicit, is 45 miles per hour 90+% of the time. And that is really to ensure that carpoolers and bus riders have that free flow travel so that there is that incentive for people to consider those options, which will help us move more people through this corridor into the district, into other parts of Northern Virginia. The average toll over the first 30 to 9, 4 to 6:30, and now it's 5:30 to 9:30 and 3 to 7. And there was a reason why the Commonwealth did move forward with that expansion of hours. So again, if you look at this chart, and it's one you've seen before, the blue line comes down at 6:30. And what used to happen on I-66 most mornings is people, solo drivers trying to beat the HOV restrictions, would jam on the road, and the road would become extremely congested with average travel speeds around 25 miles per hour. And it would stay congested for about 45 minutes, sometimes longer, and then travel speeds further degraded towards the end of the HOV period, with people getting on the road hoping that if they were caught, it wouldn't be until after 9 because they were stuck in traffic, and they could say they had gotten on after 9. Expanding these hours, which was in the multimodal study completed by the McDonnell administration, is something we thought was necessary to try and ensure that the roadway never became severely congested. As those of you know in Northern Virginia, when a road becomes that congested, recovering is extremely difficult. And so we didn't want to have that situation. So that was one of the major reasons why the Commonwealth did move forward with expanding these hours from 2.5 to 4 hours during each period in each direction. People were less willing to use or pay to use the express lanes outside the Beltway if they knew when they hit the Beltway they had to bail somewhere down 495 and deal with 395 or deal with GW at the height of rush hour. If 66 inside the Beltway they could continue on towards their destination, then they'd be more likely to use outside the Beltway. So inside being converted to express lanes during rush hour resulted in more revenue being projected to be collected on I-66 outside the Beltway. In these 50-year P3 contracts, the only way you can actually realize the benefits of those types of expected policy changes is to warrant them in the contract that you're executing. So the outside the Beltway P3 contract includes a provision that would create a compensation event for the I-66 concessionaire where if the tolling hours or the HOV requirements are different than the 2016 compromise with the General Assembly, then they have the right to file a compensation event, which likely would have some impact on that $578.9 million concession payment that the Commonwealth has received. I am not in the game of speculating what that impact would be. And in the event that there are modifications that the General Assembly would force the Commonwealth to move forward with, we potentially have litigation, and I don't want to speculate as to what that impact would be. But I do want to say that there is a compensation event for that contractor if the tolling hours, the HOV requirements, and the fact that there's express lanes is modified on inside the Beltway from that compromise that the administration reached with the General Assembly in 2016. I would note that provision was made public prior to receiving final bids and was not included in the contract until after a compromise was reached with the General Assembly in 2016.
One of the reasons why you were seeing such degradation of the average speed prior to this change was because there were so many violators on the road and enforcement was a joke. I know it was very spotty. Anybody who travels a corridor knew how to beat it very easily, and a lot of people did. Now, I've got some colleagues, and hopefully you won't go searching in my office to figure out who I work with, who are still traveling 66 for free with a flex transponder. They simply just click the button, turn it on, and now they're traveling as if they're HOV, except they're not. And they've been doing it now for a month and however long, and they haven't gotten caught. And this is more than one person. The Secretary's answer when I brought this up was people generally don't do that, and that has been the experience on the Beltway lanes. But I think it's easier to enforce there than it is on 66. So what's the answer? Is there some sort of technology that's going to be able to catch people? Because so far it hasn't really happened.
Well, first I would just say, as a government official, and I'm not saying this, we don't condone anyone breaking the law if you get away with it. Taking something that you're not supposed to take is wrong, and it's not something you do if you get away with it. I understand some people are doing that, but It's not appropriate. I would also say that on 66, something that was different than 95 was the violation rate, as you noted, was so much higher than on 95. So in 95, prior to the conversion, we estimated the violation rate was 25 to 27%. We now believe it's closer to 1. So on 66, it was 45%. So if we're under 5, we're doing a heck of a lot better than we were before. We do have technology at the toll gantries that can make it easier for the troopers to identify those who are claiming HOV status, and when you don't have to check every single vehicle, it does make enforcement easier. That does not mean that certain individuals will choose to not comply with the law and take advantage of the situation. There are efforts nationally to work on efforts to try and see if you can identify through other means whether a car is HOV or not. I'm not sure whether those efforts will be successful or what the time frame is for that. We are obviously talking with the other operators, and we'll continue to look into that issue there. And,
well, I wish we had done that prior to this big project, because we could have perhaps gotten the 45% number down and improved 66 prior to having to go through all this. But here we are.
Okay. Mr. Meyer?
Yeah, so I have a lot, but I'll start with one or two. So my first one is sort of really fundamental because it has to do with honesty. So on page 44 of the 2015 report, the slide that you referenced,
This is slide I reference is not from that report, sir. It's from the public meetings.
okay, well, it literally
If you
mirrors,
tell-
well, so this was a public, well, it was presented to the public. It's the exact copy of what you have in your report. On page 44, it says, the toll rates listed below represent the average toll rates across the entire AM and peak periods for a full-length trip between I-66 between 495 and US 29. Not the average of all trips, which could be less, which is basically, could be that 1 mile stretch coming in from Roslyn. And so the idea to represent that you're somehow beating your projections when you're basically changing what you would actually pledge to the General Assembly, pledge to the public, I think is duplicitous. And so, and then to continue to say this, to say that we're actually beating our expectations, well, that's just not the case. Further, in a CTB report from 2016, you said that the average toll is expected to be $6 per trip. You aren't making that.
The average toll is about $6.50 per trip, so you're right, it is slightly higher there. We always noted it was an estimate and a model, and there's two things those of us who have dealt with transportation for a number of years know. Estimates and models are never 100% accurate. I do want to note that the slide I have presented is what was shown to hundreds of people at a public meeting. There is a document that you and 4 other individuals over the last 2 years have downloaded from that website that does have an inaccurate statement in there. I apologize that's in there. What happened is we had one toll consultant that prepared the work and a different one that summarized it. They were inaccurate. If you look at the date of that document, sir, you will see it is slightly before the October hearings in 2015, and you will see that the accurate information was presented at those hearings. I apologize that you found that after the fact.
Well, I apologize that it's still on your website, because it is.
And if
It's still
you had taken
it's
it down,
still
you probably would have
actively
expressed
discussed the
concerns
link
that we were
from
trying to
your
hide it.
website. And the next thing I'll say is this.
And I want to say, the idea that we intentionally misled people, I find particularly upsetting. As a public official, it's something we never try and do. And I just want to note that in particular, the presentations I've cited were done by staff at VDOT. And I would just hope we wouldn't impugn their integrity on this issue. You can come after me. I'm a political appointee, but these aren't presentations that I gave. These aren't documents that I put together. And again, I do apologize that there was something that's inaccurate that's up there. Our IT staff have indicated that 5 people have accessed that. So I don't believe that is what was warranted to the public. I'm one of them. You're one of them. Some of the VDOT staff is number 3. I believe Martin Caro is number 4, and I don't know what number 5 is. But I know that this slide was presented to hundreds of people at a public hearing and has been downloaded more often. I do apologize that that is up there.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, it's not just us. I mean, I've heard from numerous members of the public who felt that those public meetings, the same thing was said to them.
What I've heard many people say is they were concerned that the maximum toll was going to be $17, and both the inaccurate document that 5 people downloaded and this presentation that was shown to hundreds of people, neither one of them state that.